back, guys, with another casual conversation with the Classic. Today, guys, I am here with arguably one of the greatest tag teams in modern history and my favorite tag team of all time right now, FTR. How are we doing today?
There's no argument, though. I would have to disagree there right off the bat. The
Yeah,
greatest tag team in the world and possibly
I mean,
history,
I think so. I
FTR.
think so,
But
but trying to be kind of not trying to
uh,
push any buttons with anybody else I might
okay,
know.
all right, all
Don't
right.
don't want to get you in trouble for future interviews.
Yeah,
I
gotta
can
keep it
respect
kind
that.
of, yeah, gotta kind
Journalistic
of keep it.
integrity, okay,
Yeah.
An unbiased opinion. I got you.
Exactly. I wanted to have you guys on here for a while. Obviously, I'm a big fan of you, both of you. And I want to talk to you guys about wrestling. I've always just wanted to talk to you guys about wrestling because
Let's
I
do
know
it.
for a fact that you guys are, as much as you guys are the greatest tag team out there today, you're also big wrestling fans, and it's something I really appreciate. So I want to kick things off with asking you, what were some of you guys' earliest memories of wrestling? Like, what do you guys like? How did you guys get into it, and what are your earliest memories?
Well, for me, the earliest memory that I have is honestly with my dad. We lived in Stone Mountain, Georgia, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and the first memory I have is actually an interview with Ric Flair and Gordon Soley, and I mean that's just the one thing that stuck with me.
Yeah,
He loved the NWA. I mean, we watched WWF too, but he loved the NWA. And I remember one of my first toys was the Junkyard Dog LJN toy.
yeah,
So that's my first memories of wrestling. But when I realized I wanted to become a wrestler was January 23rd, I think is when it was, 1993. My mom got me the King of the Ring pay-per-view for my birthday. And I watched Bret Hart have three incredible matches, three different stories. And I had no idea why then. But at the end of that pay-per-view, I just absolutely fell in love with him. And I said, that's what I want to do for a living.
definitely.
I've said it before, but I went from wanting to be a Power Ranger to a wrestler, and I've never changed my mind.
For me, I don't know if my dad was a huge fan. Like when he was younger, he never really talked about it. I know my aunts were. Like my aunts would go all the time in Asheville. They were front row all through the 80s. Like they were
Yeah,
diehards. My grandma was a big fan, but my earliest real memory, like of a human like wrestler that I can recall by name, was Hulk Hogan, and I was a few years younger than my older brothers, so they would all play with their school age friends, and I was not old enough yet. I was around 4, I'd guess, and my dad made me sit next to his chair while he read his newspaper, and I'm watching Saturday morning wrestling, and it's Hulk, and he
yeah.
makes his entrance, and I was just like, who is this guy? And that's the earliest memory I have of like an individual wrestler. And then from that point forward, we didn't have cable a lot, so I would just watch when I could. My grandma had a bunch of VHS tapes, so I mean, the old classic stuff is how I kind of got introduced to it. We didn't have modern cable, so I watched the classic stuff, and
Yeah,
that's kind of my introduction to it.
I have a lot of similarities with both of you. The Power Ranger thing for sure, and then the classic tapes because I had an older brother who was 10 years older than me. So I had all these tapes from the 80s and these old magazines and the LGN figures. So I was surrounded by the old school stuff, and that's what kept me in it as well. That being said, there was a lot of wrestlers that were even a little bit before I was even born that I'm a huge fan of because I was surrounded by that classic.
hmm
So I'm curious with both of you. I know you mentioned Hulk and I know you mentioned Brett, but who are some of your other favorites?
Oh my God. So like maybe specifically you're asking that maybe we didn't grow up on, or just in
Oh, just
general?
even if you didn't grow up on them, just when you were watching wrestling in the early years, like who were some of the people you looked forward to watching the most and you enjoyed?
Oh man, the people that I'm fans of today, Arn Anderson. My dad
Yeah,
loved Arn Anderson. He loved Ric Flair. I loved Flair. Obviously, I was a fan of Hulk too. I had the old Hulk toy that did
yeah,
the Hulk up
the
deal.
Hasbro one, right? Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
had that. Um, I was a huge fan of obviously Sting as well. More or less WCW. I didn't really get into WWF too much until the real rise of Brett, and for some
Yeah,
reason he drew me into him. But getting out of the '80s and going to the '90s, I loved Razor. I loved Chris Benoit. I loved Eddie Guerrero. For some reason, I was drawn to those guys. I didn't think they were smaller at the time, you know what I mean? But I was drawn to their style of wrestling and how intense they were. Like the feud Benoit had with Kevin Sullivan, holy crap, that changed my
yeah,
whole mindset on wrestling.
yeah.
the Bret Shawn Ironman match, that's the kind of match that I like. I remember writing down spots like tackle, drop down, reverse hip toss, kickoff, arm drag, like, and saying that's the kind of match I want to have when I'm a wrestler.
No,
And so those are the kind of wrestlers and matches I was drawn to.
Yeah, like after Hulk, like I said, he was the first guy I really remembered seeing individually. But then after that, I became a Bret guy, and that's kind of like how Dax and I first really formed a bond. Was are you a Bret guy? And we both were, obviously. And then it just became like I don't know. I liked everybody. Like, not everybody. I hated most heels. Like, I hated Mr. Perfect. I hated heel Shawn Michaels. Not much has changed. Just kidding.
Right.
But I loved like the big guys. I loved the smaller guys. Like, I was a Goldberg fan just as much as I was a fan of the cruiserweights. Like, size, like as far as wrestlers, like was just didn't exist. It was just who was good, who had
Right.
something. Even the guys that weren't that great in the ring, I was still drawn to them because of their personalities. So it was all across the board for me. I was just a fan. I just loved it. So like the guys that I watched growing up, I still enjoy watching now. I'll go back and like Dax was saying, I'll go back and I'll watch Sting and I'll watch Flair and I'll watch Arn and Tully and I'll watch the Rockers and the Rock and Roll, the Midnights. Like that's what I grew up on. That's what I loved then, and I still love it now.
Yeah, I understand where you come from too. Because like, for example, like Juventud Guerrero wasn't the biggest star, but I just remember being a kid and loving Juventud Guerrero. Like,
Yeah.
And just like Cash said, like I never thought about size. I think the only person that thought about size was Vince.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the fans, or at least I don't remember. And I don't remember my dad looking and saying, "Oh my gosh, he's so short. He couldn't." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was how they portrayed themselves on television and how they worked. You know what I mean?
I think that's a
And
narrative
that's kind of what
that's a narrative that's put out there in this internet era where people
That's
hear
something
right.
We've said it like we are beating a dead horse at this point because we say it so much, but it's not just the moves; it's the emotion that the person that's doing them makes you feel. Anybody can do a jumping shoulder tackle, but when John Cena does it, it makes you feel something different. Anybody can do a suicide dive, but when Darby Allin does it, it's different.
Yeah.
Like it's just
well,
it's
I
the
can't
emotion.
do a suicide dive.
That's not true. You've done one, and I've got video proof of it.
We need to see that. We need to see that.
Triple threat match, I believe, maybe. DIY and authors, or did I do that one?
Yeah. No, but it's true. It's true. It's something that wasn't a thing before. And it is. It's like, when someone's like, it's the conviction of doing something, right? Like, that they feel what they're doing and they're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. And that it doesn't matter how big or small you really are.
Yeah.
You talked about how you two bonded over Bret Hart first, right? So I'm curious because we talked about a lot of wrestlers now, a lot of single stars. You brought up some tag teams, Cash, but I'm curious, like, when was it that you guys really started taking tag team wrestling seriously and started looking at it more? Was it when you guys were put together, or were you guys always tag team wrestling fans?
So I was in a tag team prior to my NXT days before I got signed. Like, and I was a tag team with Derek Driver called New Wave.
Yeah.
And like the Southeast, like NW Anarchy and all those things, kind of where we did most of our stuff. Like, I was always a fan of tag team wrestling. I enjoyed singles wrestling too, but I don't know. There's just something about having 5 different guys, if you count the referee in there, just all like working together to do something, because it's just there's so many combinations of things you can do and so much fun. So when we met, we just kind of knew that we had a similar style and a similar mindset, and we said like, hey, if we ever get to NXT at the same time, we should pitch being a tag team.
Yeah.
And for me, like I always loved tag team wrestling, but I loved it more because it was just like 2 best friends working together. Like, for example, I loved Stars and Stripes versus Pretty Wonderful and WCW in '94. Like, that was great stuff to me because it was 2 guys who dressed alike, or 2 different teams, and they dressed alike and they had each other's backs. I remember Bobby Eaton and Steve Kern formed a team on WCW Saturday Night, and it was called Bad Attitude. And they had like these long what is it called? You've got the vest and the tails sticking out or whatever. Like
those coats, those
like the tailored coats or whatever.
Yeah,
like the coattails.
The wings at the back.
Coattails. Yeah,
wingtails.
Like AEW, just like the AEW tag team division was on our coattails. But the coattails.
Right.
And they didn't team very long, and they weren't a great tag team, but I loved them because they looked like a tag team. So I think I just always loved the concept of you teaming up with someone who is essentially at least supposed to be your best friend. And I love that, started with I loved Jim and Bret. Obviously, I loved Arn and Tully. I loved the Rockers. I loved it all, but I never was a tag team wrestler really until I worked with Cash.
And one thing real quick, when I first started really thinking, I think I want to be a wrestler, it was around the time that you had like the TLC stuff going on. You had all the beautiful tag team matches between the Dudleys and Edge and Christian and the Hardys. And then you had Too Cool and you had the New Age Outlaws and all these different tag teams that were really cool. And like for me, being from North Carolina, from nowhere, North Carolina, the Hardy Boys were a big inspiration because that was the first time I was like, oh man, you can be from the middle of nowhere in this state and still have a real opportunity. So I think that was another thing that kind of pulled me into it.
So, of course, the Hardy Boys are a great tag team, one of the most legendary tag teams on the road. But your guys' style isn't as similar as the Hardy Boys. So, who influenced your guys' style of tag team wrestling more? I mean, you did do that one flip in that match, but
and then we lost.
Yeah, made sense.
Obviously, well, thank you. We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later, but obviously, Arn and Tully, everyone, we've been compared to them for the last 7 years. But man, I think maybe we might have stolen more stuff from the Midnight Express than anybody.
Yeah.
Like the Midnight Express matches with the Fantastics and the Rock and Roll Express, even the Midnights versus Pillman and Z-Man. We've stolen so much from them, and obviously,
I was going to say the Fantastics are a team that we've stolen a lot from that I don't think a lot of people mention these days. Like we get the Arn and Tully and the Midnight comparisons more often, but the Fantastics were a great babyface team, and they provided us with some really cool ideas for helping our baby faces.
Yeah, like to give our baby faces something. God, man, we've stolen from. I don't care what anyone says. Nasty Boys were a great tag team, especially for a period of time until like maybe like '95 or something. Whenever they started getting a little older, maybe their bodies were breaking down a bit, and they'd gotten guaranteed money or whatever. But until then, they were a great tag team.
Yeah, I loved their AWA stuff. I watched that a lot.
Yeah, I know.
The WWF stuff, even the beginning WCW stuff was great.
Yeah, and you guys are saying the word steal, but I want to put it out there. It's not really like you're using stuff they did because it worked, right? Like you're influenced by these teams. I don't want wrestling fans to take it the wrong way, but you were influenced by these teams because they did things a certain way, and you took things from everybody. And every wrestler takes things from certain people they were influenced, and
they influence us so much. Like we love to take things and like modify them to more of our style, the way we would do them, and make them personalized to us. But they've influenced us so much. If you see, like, you can always see the inspiration and something behind what we've done as far as our homages to tag teams of the past.
And it's like the little details too, because I remember
I
haven't seen stuff in like I watch a lot of wrestling obviously, but for a lot of years maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, but I remember the first time I saw Dax like cut the ring and he did the run and cut the ring that way. I was like, oh whoa, I haven't seen that since like the old stuff I used to watch, like.
So that's what I mean. Like we haven't really. I mean, we've stolen, yes, but we haven't stolen a tag team's down to the wire, their moves and their move set and stuff like that. But at one time there was a way different concept of tag team wrestling, and fans have been conditioned to what tag team wrestling is today. The beauty of tag team wrestling is the nuances, are the small things, and how you have to work four guys into the match and work them in there in a legal way. And you have to do it flawlessly and seamlessly. And that slide thing you were talking about, we stole that from Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch. They would do the exact same thing. Like they'd have the hold, the babyface would roll them off, tag, they'd run and slide in front to cut that off. And that's the little nuances. I think one of the best matches to see those nuances is the Brain Busters versus Hart Foundation, because you have four guys who are completely qualified in the ring, but they're not just doing moves. They're integrating tag team stuff. They're integrating their best friends, and we're coming in and we're working together to make this our moment. And it's not about the moves. It's not about hitting a move and kicking out. And, oh my God. And it's not about four guys in the ring for 2 minutes. You know what I mean? And I hate to harp on that, but that's what makes tag team wrestling different from singles wrestling.
It's the working together and the small little details to get the victory rather than trying to get your stuff and then working alone. And you're working
Right.
as a well-oiled machine.
Yes.
You guys have been compared to Tully and Arn. You guys have used stuff from the Midnight Express, who had a great feel, the Rock and Roll Express. You guys have had the opportunity to work with the Rock and Roll Express. You guys have Tully in your corner. You have Arn with you guys on screen doing stuff all the time. How does it feel to be able to work with these people that you guys grew up watching and influenced you a lot?
Yes, yeah, it's surreal. Like sometimes I sit back and I still can't believe it. Maybe after a glass of wine or two, but I can't believe I can't believe the fact that Arn Anderson will text me and tell me how great the match is. I can't believe the fact that Bret Hart texts me and says this match is incredible. You guys are incredible. You should do this, or he gave us a Hart Foundation spot to steal, and like. Those are the things that are surreal to me. The guys that I grew up idolizing don't idolize us now, obviously, but they are fans of us. That's the cool part.
Yeah. What has there been like a certain piece of advice that any of them have given you that's really stuck with you, so far?
Yeah. Well, there's quite a bit. Bret told us to not change anything that we've been doing. Like he said the style of work you have and how you guys work together and how simplistic and physical you are, don't change that, because that never goes out of style. Tully, for example, he just said always keep your foot on the gas pedal. He said try to blow your opponent up, which is what we're kind of known to try to do now. Try to blow your opponent up, because that will bring them up to your level instead of you having to drop down to their level. And that sounds egotistical, but you know what I mean. Arn just praises us, and he gives us these little details and little nuances that we can use for cutoffs and hook spots and things like that. So every one of them have given us some piece of advice.
That's awesome. Was there any was it a battle at all to get Tully to be your guys' manager, or was it something he was really interested in?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. He was very, very excited. He had never seen any of our work before, because when he was out of wrestling, for 30 years, he stopped watching wrestling. He hadn't watched it in years. So Arn made him sit down with him and watch our matches on Arn's iPad. So they watched some matches of American Alpha.
That was our first day there, wasn't it?
I think so. But they watched the matches with.
Pretty sure it was.
American Alpha. They watched some matches of. I can't remember the matches they watched, but they watched some, and he became a huge fan of ours. And I pitched to Tony, hey, why don't we have this guy as our manager? Because we came in as quasi babyface at first.
Yeah.
But I was like, let's have this. I laid out this whole thing, the tag team appreciation night, and I said, this is when I said let's don't turn heel on the Young Bucks. Let's save us touching for later. I said, let us turn heel on Ricky and Robert and get real sympathy from them, but get real heat for us. And then that transitions into Tully being our manager. He set up the whole thing. And he was completely on board. Tony loved the idea. And, it gave us a little credibility as a tag team to have one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time in our corner.
That's amazing. How about for you, Cash? How was it to have working with Tully and Arn and all these guys?
Yeah, like we got to work with Arn for a few years before over at WWE, but we never got to work with Arn without being under the restrictions that he had before. Because he'll tell you, like, and he said it on his podcast, like it was different. Not like it's a bad thing, but now he gets to be Arn, and if he has some knowledge to add to take up to somebody, it's just he can go up to it and say it without anything like holding him back, and he's got so much knowledge, and he would help us all the time on live events, because we took a lot of pride in working really hard on live events and changing it up a lot, not just doing the same thing because it's easy and we know it works. And Arn would always come up, and he would watch every night, and he would come up and he would tell us like what he liked, what he didn't like, what worked, and he was just one of those guys that always made the time for people that wanted the time.
That's awesome.
So like that was always cool. Now getting to see him there is even better. And then like Dak said, getting to work with Tully when he's been out of the business so long and he has so much untapped knowledge because he hasn't been around to share it. Like he hasn't watched anything in 30 years, like he was saying, and that's mind blowing. But he still has all these things that worked when he was active,
Yeah.
when he was on top. And we say it all the time. He was one of the most underrated like heels probably ever because he was so good at making his opponents look good, but he knew when to turn the seriousness up and when to be on the back pedal and when to be on his ass. And he brings a different promo aspect to us too because he looks at it from a different perspective and things that we don't always think of. He'll say, "Hey, make sure you mention this or get this in there," and it reminds us, "Oh, we do need to drive that home." So those guys, it's stupid how smart they are and how helpful they are. So it's been a blessing to work with those guys every time we're there.
No, of course, I bet. The next thing I really want to ask you guys about was how you guys came up with the name FTR. Like, obviously, we've heard it been used even prior to you guys coming to the to AEW in a different context, but then you guys ran with the name FTR and you made it your own. How did you guys choose to go with FTR?
Well, we had started using it when we were in WWE, to our advantage, and we called ourselves Forever the Revival.
Yeah.
And that's something that they couldn't trademark, so we did, and that's just it was a natural progression for us to keep the FTR. We went through a few different deals of what FTR would mean. And then we decided, you know what, just let it go and let it be whatever it wants to be and whatever they want it to be, whatever the situation brings. And when we formed with Tully, we decided to call ourselves Fear the Revelation because 4 horsemen were in the Book of Revelations. And, and when we were going to come in, we were going to call ourselves Fear the Revolt because we thought we were revolting against WWE for going to this other company. So yeah, whatever anybody wants it to be.
But there's no set right? There's no set meaning.
Yeah, we like to just kind of let it be fluid. Whatever the situation calls for at that time, we like to use it that way. We knew for a while that we didn't want to be with WWE when our contracts came up. We had asked for our release. We'd made it pretty clear, and we knew when we did, we couldn't be Dash or Scott or the Revival.
Finley.
So like when the FTR thing happened, at first we didn't really know, like, do we even acknowledge it? Do we go with it? Because it was obvious it was a different meaning. It was not for us.
Yeah.
But we decided, why not? Like, why not steer into this? Let's take it. Let's go with it. Like, people are talking about it. It's known. Why try to act like it's not there? Why not capitalize on it to our benefit?
So obviously coming into AEW for like a year or two before that, there was all this hype around the Young Bucks versus the Revival and who's the best tag team. Obviously, like we mentioned, how there was a negative connotation to FTR because of the BTE series and how they would reference you guys, and you guys turned around the name and made it something. But we all want to see when eventually the Revival would face the Young Bucks. There was even that tweet exchange where they're like, one day it'll happen, just wait. And then finally, when you guys show up to AEW, we got the match. How do you guys feel about working with the Young Bucks, and are we going to see more of it in the future?
So the match was great, obviously, because we were in it. But the match was great. I wish it was in front of 10,000 people. It's one of my favorite matches we've ever had because we had a plan, we had an idea. I had the finish. We both had the finish in mind for years. I knew it would work, and if the story was told right. So yeah, the match was great. Again, I wish we could run it back in front of a packed house, but circumstances are standing in the way. I will just leave it alone because Dan tries to make sure that I'm nice or nicer. I've been getting nicer, but I'll just wrap it up and say that so I won't get in trouble. I'll just say we were the 1998 Ultimate Warrior to their Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that. Hopefully Tony doesn't say anything. Hopefully Tony doesn't say anything about that. I might text you and ask you to take that out.
Fair enough. And if you remember what happened in 1998 or why they say they brought Warrior into that company, maybe that will make that a little bit more transparent to all of you listening out there. On the flip side, the tag division is very stacked in AEW. I think AEW is probably one of the best tag divisions today for wrestling and compared to all the other companies. I mean, there's you guys, there's the Young Bucks, there's Santana and Ortiz, there's the Lucha Brothers, there's all these other tag teams that, are on the show frequently, but like probably don't get as much love, like the Butcher and the Blade, like Bear Country, and etc. Like it's a very stacked tag division. How does that feel for you guys to be in a company where there is a stacked tag division? And who are you guys looking forward to work with that you may not have worked with so far?
Oh man, I feel like there's still, like, even the guys we've worked with so far, there's still so much meat on the bone for going back and telling more stories with every one of those teams. But because I don't know if there's anybody we haven't really wrestled yet as far as tag teams there that we had on our list, because we've gotten to work with Butcher and the Blade and Proud and Powerful and Private Party. I mean, the Bucks, everybody we've really wanted to SCU before they broke up, but now trying to think of who. I think when Darius Martin's ready to come back, Top Flight's a team at the top of my list for a team that I really want to step in the ring with, because we never got a chance before he tore his ACL. And when he comes back, obviously Dante's doing insanely great things right now, but I still feel like there's a lot of potential there for those two as a team.
Fair enough.
I think Top Flight's going to be a great team, and I think that more than anybody else, we can teach them about tag team wrestling and what it actually means. Private Party, we did have one match with them, but I think if we had 18 minutes or 20 minutes to tear the house down with those guys, it could change the whole perception of who they are.
Especially if we had a story built up going into it that we could really invest in, and not just go out there and have a match with moves. We could go out there and really tell a story about them and make people care about them.
No, I think also, like you said, Bear Country, that's a team we'd like to work with too. I think we could teach them a lot too. I mean, honestly, dude, look, we're again, I'm patting myself on the back, or ourselves on the back, but we're the only team in this generation to work with the greatest tag teams of this generation. There's nobody else that's worked with New Day or American Alpha or DIY or the Usos, Red Dragon, Ortiz and Santana, the Young Bucks, SCU, Hardy Boys, on down the list. There's no other team that has worked with that caliber of tag teams except for us. And so there's really only one team that we got to add to that list sometime of greatest teams of this generation, and that's the Briscoes. I mean, it's got to happen somewhere, and that'll complete that. That's something that's very important to me for our legacy. The belts and stuff like that, and winning championships and PWI #1 tag team and stuff, that's all cool and stuff, and that adds to it. But being able to say we work with this diverse group of tag teams and had great matches with every single one of them probably means more to me than all that. And so the Briscoes are at the top of our list to cap that whole generational of tag team wrestlers.
Honestly, with everything that's going on in the world of wrestling, that could potentially happen, and I think that's super cool. I'm looking forward to it, because I'm a big Briscoes fan. I've been a fan of them for years.
That's a huge one for both of us. Somehow, some way, like Dak said, we'll do everything in our power to make that happen, and it will happen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you did bring up winning. You guys have won almost every title in every company you've been in. You won the NXT, the Raw and SmackDown tag titles. You won the AEW tag titles, and now you guys won the AAA tag titles. Was that something you guys knew was going to happen one day, that we're going to one day go after those AAA titles too? And is it your guys' goal also to win the tag belts almost everywhere you guys go?
Oh yeah, our goal is to win every tag title in every company that we ever compete in. Like, it wasn't something like I ever really thought might be possible. I wasn't sure where our career would take us. Like, it's so hard to predict where you're going to be. Like, when we were in NXT, I didn't know where we'd be 5 or 10 years down the road. I just knew that I wanted to be wrestling, and I wanted us to be doing what we loved. And, it's been going great. But I never really thought, like, okay, there's going to be a point in time where we're going to be wrestling for a company that knocks down the forbidden door, and you can go almost anywhere in the world for any of these major companies that are so historic, and you can wrestle there. You can win the AAA tag team titles on Dynamite and then go to Triple Mania and defend them. Or you can show up at New Japan like so many of the guys have done, like out of the blue, like Mox was doing. And it's something we wanted to do. Obviously, there's still a lot of things we want to do and titles we want to win, but I wasn't sure if it'd ever be something that was realistic.
Yeah, but then once it started happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so many fans and so many people equate great tag teams to winning championships. And there is some sort of like honor in holding a championship because they trust you in it, So obviously we wanted to win the AAA tag team titles. We didn't know if that would ever happen, and it did. We got the opportunity to do that. And, next on our list is the AEW. We want to be the first ever 2-time AEW tag team champions.
Yeah.
But also we want to be continue to be the only team to hold all the aforementioned titles and the IWGP tag team championships too.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that happens soon as well. You just gave me two things I can't wait to look forward to. Then IWGP tag titles and the Briscoes, the two things I'll be rooting for.
We might combine those one day. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
And I'll beat the shit out of Ishii.
Yeah. This is a question I already know the answer to because we already talked about it. But I'm gonna ask you guys anyways. There's a fan question. I want to take a question from the fans. Me being from Canada, like my answer is very biased as well. But Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels, and why?
I mean, I'll go first because that'll be a little bit shorter and a little more short and sweet. But I mean, just you go back and you watch Bret, and everything he did holds up. Like the believability, the emotion, the passion, like just how he carried himself. Like he was such a consummate professional. He took such great pride in the respect part of it, not just like in the backstage area, but in the ring. Like the craft, he respected the craft so much, and that you can watch that, you can feel that. And Bret wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the flashiest. Like I don't know what it was that made Hulk Hogan be the first guy I remember, but I know what it is that made Bret Hart the guy that was the next favorite for me, and it's the fact that he humanized himself. And you could relate to him, and you could feel his pain. Everything he did was real, and so like that stood out to me. And when he took a sternum into the turnbuckle, and he fell, he would collapse in the coolest ways possible because he's so good at it. I felt that, and that's why I think Bret was just so good at what he did, and why I always lean Bret when you say Bret or Shawn.
Before you answer, Dex, let me just add a little thing here because this is why this question came to my mind originally. About a week ago, I had a debate with a friend of mine that does a podcast named Sir Wilkins, and he put out a tweet where he said, I think
we met him this weekend.
Yeah, he's like, I feel like Shawn Michaels had more of an impact on modern day wrestling than Bret Hart. I'm like, the impact part I understand, but the more than Bret Hart part was unnecessary. Do you believe that to be true? Do you think?
Well, I think Shawn had a longer career than Bret, and especially on top. So his work gets seen more, gets looked at more.
Yeah.
But to encapsulate everything about Bret is just Bret, and his work is timeless.
Yeah.
You can watch it in 1950 and you can watch it in 2021, and it always resonates. You can't say the same thing about Shawn. Bret, to me, there were so many guys that were more over than Bret. I understand that. Stone Cold and The Rock and Hogan and, even maybe Savage. There were more guys that were over than Bret. There was never, and there never will be, I don't think, anybody over like Bret. He made people cry. He made them feel a certain way. And I don't even know why. Like, he still makes me feel a certain way. His work and the way he spoke to you and how he was just, everything was believable. And you knew he wasn't lying to you. And just, he made me feel a certain way. And his matches are, for a period of time, people were saying, oh my gosh, his matches are boring. They're slow. But now they've come around and they're like, holy shit, his matches are the greatest matches of all time because there's thought that goes into it. Every single movement, there's thought that has gone into it, why it's happening, why he's doing it. I will sit back with my wife and I'll watch a Bret Hart match, and sometimes like a Bobby Eaton match too, but I'll watch a Bret Hart match and I'll just shake my head. And she's like, what's wrong? Or was that bad? Or something. And I'm saying, no, I just can't understand. It even pisses me off a little bit, but I can't understand why he's so good and how he's so good. I want to be a fraction of that.
Though. I love when I watch somebody that I respect, and I just have to like shake my head and like How do they do that? How are they so good? I love that. That's
and
why.
maybe Shawn does have more of an impact on modern wrestling today. But I watch modern wrestling today and I see their punches are shit. I see their kicks are shit. I see their side headlocks and their lockups and their holds are shit. I see them do backflips off the top rope and that's amazing. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of times I see the in-between stuff that makes people, that sucks the people in, look like shit. They can wow the audience, and then that one time they snatch a side headlock or a rear chin lock, and it's so lazy, or they give them a punch and it's off by 3 feet. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm watching something.
I'll say this: I think maybe the idea of Shawn's style had more of an influence, but the execution of it did not. Shawn was very good at his style, but everything he did in between, like he had good transitional stuff too. He didn't slack in between, but people just noticed the flashy stuff that he did, and they would try to mimic the flashy stuff and not care about the stuff that goes with it. So I think the idea of his style maybe influenced more, but if you look back, the execution now is not the same as the way he did.
That's probably the best way to put it, because I thought, I'm like, that's probably the best way to put it. But I get what both of you are saying. With Bret, Bret was like a symbol of someone that, like Dax was saying, every move had a purpose. Like there was a reason why he was doing something. As a kid, I didn't get it. As I got older and I watched, I'm like, oh, it's building up to something more that we're gonna get to at the end. Like he's working on that leg so much because that's
Brett's matches are a fine line. The older you get, the more you respect it.
Not just every move, every step. Every step had a purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what's freaking beautiful about him. And you know what? Hey, let's don't talk about Shawn personally, okay? Let's don't talk about it personally.
Yeah, we're
I got some stories about it. No. Let's don't. Okay. Let's don't talk about Raw 25 and how he treated me. Let's don't do that, okay?
Okay.
I'll get off on a tangent there.
To your Bret thing though, one of the things I did love about Bret too is like, and me and my friend always joke about it when we watch it, like, isn't this so funny? Like it'll be like 5 minutes of the match, and it works, like the facial expression, but it's like he actually looks like he's getting exhausted throughout the match. Like he's huffing, he's puffing, he leaves his mouth open, you're like, oh, it looks like he's working, and this is making him tired. Like,
but then he wrestled another 20 minutes.
Yeah, another 20 minutes. And also to what you said, Cash, like, it's the authenticity too. Like I always watch Bret, I'm like, everything just felt real to me.
Yeah.
Where guys like Hogan and Savage and Warrior Wall larger than life and kind of seemed like they were like, you couldn't be like that. But they're
superheroes
like,
versus like some of them humanize themselves.
Yeah.
So you could sympathize with them. You could relate more to that than you could a superhero. You could aspire to be a superhero, but you knew you were more like Rocky.
Yeah.
So that's what Bret was. Bret was more like Rocky. He made you feel for him.
100%. I'm intrigued by that Raw 25 comment, but we will move on and we will talk about the next thing I want to bring up, because I was almost 100% sure you guys were going to say Bret, and not even almost, I was 100% sure you guys were going to say Bret.
Sorry to surprise you like that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I throw in like these little transition words like almost and arguably, just not to make people mad, but I knew. Moving forward, one of the coolest things that we heard this year was that AEW will be working with the Owen Hart Foundation and working with that family, or something we haven't really seen a lot of in the past 20 years or so. And there's going to be like an Owen Hart Cup tournament and stuff like that. Like, how do you guys feel about that? Obviously, you guys are big fans of the Hart family, and how cool is it to be working with a company that's doing stuff like that?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, Tony's the best. He's the greatest. He's the greatest boss I've ever worked for. I mean, I've driven septic tank trucks. I've worked in food service. I've worked as a DJ. I've done every job imaginable just so I can keep my head above water. And he is the greatest boss that I've ever worked with. And so I can tell you without any kind of doubt in my mind, he didn't do this for any publicity. He did it because he's a fan. And he did it because he loves Owen Hart and he loves professional wrestling. And he did it because he wants to give back to the fans, and he doesn't want the legacy of Owen Hart to go away. So that's the coolest thing about the whole Owen Hart tournament and tribute and all that stuff. That's the coolest thing to me, that I work with a boss who loves professional wrestling, loves what he does, but wants to give back and wants the tradition of wrestling to stay alive. And there's a reason why you see these older guys that have paved the way for all of us to make a hell of a lot of money and make a living. There's a reason why they were brought into AEW and they're used the right way. And they're not being embarrassed, or like the owner's not embarrassed to put them on national television. It's because he wants to remind the fans, this is where we came from, this is where we're going, and we're going to bridge that gap. Obviously, we want to be in the tournament, and I hope and pray that Tony puts us in there. But if he doesn't, I'm just as proud to work for AEW just because he's doing something like this.
Oh, it is super cool. It's keeping the legacy alive. And I obviously, also being Canadian and being the younger brother, resonated with Owen a lot.
To Dax's point, like, you're working for the right place and for the right boss when you see how excited he is when he gets to tell people about it.
Yeah.
Like when he was breaking the news to people personally, you can see him light up because, like you said, he loves pro wrestling and he loves the history of pro wrestling and he respects it and he wants to honor it. And the fact that Owen hasn't been able to be honored in so long because of just everything involved. Like now, finally, like 2021, like they finally announced this is happening, and he takes so much pride in that because he finally gets to pay tribute to somebody that he looked up to so much, and that's when like this isn't just like for publicity. It's not just for anything other than the respect and the love of the person that he's honoring, and that's cool. And if we're not in it, I'm going to be watching it as a fan because I'm a huge wrestling fan, obviously. And so regardless, I'd love to be in it, but I'm just proud to be part of it at this point.
I'm really looking forward to it. And, regardless, I don't know if you guys play video games, but at least you guys can wrestle Owen in the game.
I played No Mercy last night.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. You can have a Cash Wheeler or a Dax Harwood versus Owen Hart in the game when it comes out eventually, because it's cool that he's gonna be and all of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was super cool. I grew up a big Owen Hart fan. Obviously, due to the circumstances, we haven't been able to get a lot of Owen Hart stuff. So now this relationship is super cool, and I want to bring it up because being big Bret Hart fans, I'm sure he's super ecstatic about it as well. Now that you brought up Tony, though, and we talked about this a little bit off the air, but I'm just curious, and the reason I'd say Tony, because you brought his name up when we talked about it off the air. I really dig your guys' theme song. It's a throwback to the 80s. How'd you guys come up with the new theme music? Because it's a vibe for sure.
Dude, we didn't. That was Tony.
Yeah.
Like, he texted us real late one night, and he was like, "Hey guys, I'm working on a new theme for you. I'm so excited. I can't wait for you to hear it." And like that was kind of it. Like we didn't know like we were going to be changing themes or anything. It was just kind of he had the idea, and we're like, all right, let's see what he has in mind. And we get to the arena, and he calls us into his office, and he hits the play button on his phone, and he just starts jamming out to it. And we're like, I've never like pictured myself walking out to anything other than the styles that we walk out to.
Yeah.
So like I'm like, okay, like how do I walk out to this? I love the theme, but how do I come out to this? And now, like when I hear it, like I just walk out and I just feel it, and I love it because it changes like the whole vibe, and everybody just kind of goes along with it and walking out to it. You see both of us kind of having fun. Dax doing the short arm with little children, and just I love it, dude.
It's a throwback a little bit, It gives me the vibe. Like you guys are a little bit of a throwback tag team, but like it gives me the vibes of like that old 80s wrestling, that old Jim Crockett or like Memphis wrestling, where it's just like it's just a beat. I don't know what about it.
You can see you can hear like the tribute to the Midnight theme in there, and that's another cool thing is that we obviously love to pay our respect to the people that came before us and the teams that paved the way. So that's cool for us too.
I'm a big fan of
it. And that little thing like that, like having that music that sounds like the Midnights, that reminds people, oh yeah, that's the Midnight Express. And so like I get texts from Dennis Condrey, and he tells me thank you. Like he says, thank you for keeping us and keeping our name out there and keeping us alive to the wrestling fans nowadays, because Vince is I don't think so. Vince is never going to do it. He's never going to put him in the Hall of Fame. He's never going to recognize them as the greatest tag team of all time, because they were never in WWF. So now we can give back a little bit by having this music.
No, I really dig. I vibe to it. It's a good jam.
Yeah, so many of those guys, like they did it for the love of wrestling, like leave a little bit of a legacy. And I like to think that a lot of those guys would be proud that they are remembered in such a positive light, and they've influenced people so much like that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think just generally with All Elite Wrestling, we've seen a lot of love to the other companies that didn't get a lot of love when WWE was like the one sole dominant company out there. Like there's a lot of things we had JJ Dillon come out there one of those weeks. Like, when was the last time we saw JJ Dillon walk out on WWE television? Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool.
To see to wrestle with Tully Blanchard on TV. How crazy is that?
Yeah. You could wrestle with Tully Blanchard on TV. Like, that's something that probably would never have happened if it wasn't for this company. And like, there is like, that's the one thing I'll say. Like, there is love shown to like the other companies more often here than there is in that company, just because they're focused on what they're doing and their history rather than the other history, you know. So it's cool to see that happening. When it's all said and done, when it's all, you know, years and years from now, how do you want the wrestling fans to remember FTR?
I just want them to remember us, period. You know, I just want them to remember us, period. And I don't know if they'll ever have. I think eventually they will. I talked to Arn about it because, you know, when Arn was a wrestler and he was a full-time wrestler, he had his fans and people knew he was great, you know. But the fans didn't really appreciate him until 15 years after he was gone. They're like, holy shit, these matches are great because Arn Anderson's in them, and it's the common bond. That's the common theme. I hope eventually the fans, because now they look at us and you know, we've got a lot of fans, and you know, we're again patting ourselves on the back. We're Raved is one of the greatest tag teams of all time and one of the greatest tag teams today. But we don't do the things that the other tag teams do. We're not as flashy as the Bucks and the Lucha Bros. And we don't do as many cool moves as Ortiz and Santana. But we do take pride in tag team wrestling. We do take pride in the nuances of tag team wrestling and being a tag team and not trying to outshine each other and not trying to outshine our baby face and things like that. So I hope, man, in 10 years, some young guys are studying our stuff. And I hope in 10 to 15 years, fans are like, oh, I get it now. You know, I get it. These matches were great. We had great dancing partners. Yeah. They were great because there was one common denominator, and that common denominator was FTR. That's my hope.
But I want to be remembered as boring, annoying, whiny assholes. Personally, like Dak said, I want to be remembered as guys who you can always know, like, 20 years from now, if there's an aspiring wrestler or there's a wrestler who's preparing for a match, they can say, hey, we got a big tag match. Let's go back and watch this rival match. Let's go back and watch this FTR match. Let's go watch this versus this. Like, I hope that we just live on in wrestling lore as far as people recalling what we did, our body of work, and respecting it, much like we do with Bret's now. Like we were just talking about, you go back and you watch Bret's body of work, and it holds up. I know if I want to watch an Eddie Guerrero match, I can just pretty much type in Eddie Guerrero, click on versus anyone, and it's going to be good. Like, so I want people to remember us as guys who went out there and, like, you're going to get a quality match. You're not going to get somebody just phoning it in. That they were guys who went out there and busted their ass every single night to put on the best match and the best product to entertain the fans. And I've said it before, but I want to be remembered as guys who gave back. Like, we got to be selfish at some point because we want to be the greatest tag team of all time, and we're going to be. But I also want to give back in the process. There's teams that we want to work with that we can teach and also learn from at the same time, because these younger kids, they have a different view that can help us at the same time. So it can keep us fresh, but we can still pass along the stuff that we've learned, that we've been taught from better tag teams than us.
Yeah.
And there's teams that always gave it 100% every night, never phoned it in, and that gave back anytime they could to make wrestling better, because we say it all the time, but we don't owe wrestling a thing, but I owe everything to wrestling. So we just want to leave it better than we found it.
Yeah, not maybe we were a bit selfish sometimes, but not selfish to the detriment of the match. Never. Selfish to make the match better, and not selfish to, oh, we got to get this move in, or we got to make sure we look good here, or we got to kick out on 3, selfish to make the wrestling match better, not selfish to make us, look better than other people.
No, and I hear that. And honestly, it was an honor and privilege to sit here and talk to you guys for a bit. When I think of tag team wrestling, you guys are like the first tag team I think of.
Thank you.
More of my style that I enjoy and stuff I grew up on. I did have the pleasure to bump into you one time, Dax. A fan asked me to take a picture of you and him. And I didn't want to bother you because I knew you guys were heading out. I had to come there to meet Jinder really quickly. But, you were really nice after that, and you're always super supportive. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Cash. before we wrap things up, though, I want to ask one last question. You guys talk about studying the game and all that. If you had to recommend, and both of you guys can answer separately, I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, but if you had to recommend one match that you would recommend fans to go check out, not of your guys, as a match of old school wrestling that you'd recommend fans to check out, what match would you say right now in this current period of time that you'd be like, go watch this on wherever you can watch it?
I would say, for me, there's two different ones. I would say there's a Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express match. It's a 2 out of 3 falls match from Philadelphia, and it's at a house show, so you have to look it up on YouTube. Okay. That's incredible, and that's what tag team wrestling is about. And then there's a match with the Midnight Express and the Fantastics from March the 26th, 1988, from NWA Pro. It goes the full hour.
Is that the Chattanooga one?
That is not the Chattanooga one. I love the Chattanooga one just as much, but if I had to choose between those two, it would be that one. Just because the intricacies of tag team wrestling. And then I guess I got to throw an Arn and Tully match in there too. Anyway, Arn and Tully versus the Rockers from MSG, March the 26th, 1989, or March the 23rd, 1989. Beautiful.
Yeah, all those. There's an Arn and Ole match that we talked about before that's against Rock and Roll, and it's so good. 86, but I can't remember exactly what month.
Yeah.
July
of 86. It's really, really good. It's about almost 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And they just do such a good job with the selling and the fire and just getting the crowd, like, so much emotion. Like,
yeah,
you forget how much fans believed back then, because you go back and watch it and nobody ever sits down. It's like a rock concert the whole time.
Yeah. I actually just sent that match to Isaiah Cassidy about 4 days ago.
I need to check it out. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate you guys coming on the show. And yeah, man, looking forward to see what you guys do next. I'm always looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rematch with the Young Bucks. We only got one match. We need more. There was never.
You need to talk to the Young Bucks about that. They'll do it.
I think it ended too soon.
I hope you got no grades compared to when you'll see that match return.
Oh, okay. Fair. Okay. I don't know if the people will get that joke, but there was a moment in there. But other than that, where can people find you on social media? And is there anything else you guys want to talk about or plug before we head off?
I think my social media, I think both of them are at Cash Wheeler FTR.
Yeah.
I've made it a point recently to kind of not use social media as much or be around it as much. So I can't really tell you for sure, but I'm pretty sure at Cash Wheeler FTR for Instagram and Twitter. And that's all the social I'll have.
I think I am at, I know Twitter, I'm at Dax FTR.
Yeah.
Instagram, I think I'm the same.
I think it's Dax Harwood on Instagram.
Maybe that.
We're really good at social media.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
And the only thing I want to say really doesn't have anything to do with wrestling, but Ryan Nemeth just put out a great video on mental health, and I would love for everybody to check that out, especially someone who, if they're kind of suffering from mental health or anxiety or depression, just so you know that mental health and anxiety, all that stuff is normal. Like, you're not alone. We all battle it. Everyone battles, not everyone, but millions of people are battling
some form.
At some point.
Yeah. At some point.
And don't be embarrassed about it. Don't be embarrassed for therapy. Don't be embarrassed for medication. But check that video out that Ryan Nemeth put out. I don't care what he ever does in wrestling. I don't care if he ever wins a belt or wins another match. He's done way more in wrestling than I'll ever, or he's done way more good in the world than I have in wrestling. So I'm proud of him for that one.
For sure. Definitely guys go check it out. Maybe I'll link them in the info as well. And last, I'm just going to plug this because I bought one and I haven't had it yet, but you guys have a ton of great merch all out there, and I got an FTR shirt that I wish I was wearing right now, but it's still at my PO box, so I can't cross the border. But I don't think they'll let us go there without all the other stuff. But I'm very excited to grab that and wrap it and stuff like that. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. The Midnight Express theme one.
Yeah, the Midnight Express theme. I saw them like
that's my favorite. Yeah.
My favorite shirt ever.
I remember I saw it and I DM'd you right away. I'm like, I'm gonna get one of these. This is a dope shirt. But,
I had to buy my own too.
Yeah, there you go. Other than that,
I just bought mine last week. They should be in the mail too.
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope to talk to you guys again down the road, hopefully. And We can do this
Anytime,
again.
dude.
Maybe
Yeah,
after
man.
after the rematch,
Hopefully
we can
with-
talk
without
again.
all the speed bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. It happens. Honestly, like hopefully we can do this in person one day, and it's not, this virtual StreamYard Zoom stuff or anything like that, and no,
Yeah.
we won't have to worry about stuff like that.
I'm
Yeah,
down.
if you want to wait until after the rematch with the Bucks, I'll bring my grandkids on the Zoom call as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you guys very much, and we'll catch you down the road. Keep doing the thing.
See you.
Thank you, man.
Dig it. Thank
Time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.